Hello, my gorgeous flipping human beings. Let me get myself settled in my chair. It's episode 4 of Growing Pains, because getting older and wiser is hard flipping work. Yes, I am going to start saying flipping because I feel that I am being heavily censored on social media outlets for the sheer amount of swearing that I do in pretty much anything I say. So I'm going to have to start censoring myself, which makes me feel a little bit sad. But flip and heck are going to be the new buzzwords moving forward. Can't wait for that. How have we been? Happy Sunday or whatever day you're listening to this. I really hope you had a lovely week and you're doing well. My week was good. It was actually one of my harder weeks, actually, which I think maybe some people would be pleased to hear, because I'm quite insufferable usually with like how great I am doing. So yeah, it was just a bit of a harder week for me mentally. I felt quite demotivated. Doing this podcast, I felt demotivated. I personally am finding it really quite difficult delivering monologues. That is just not natural. I find it uncomfortable. And also on an emotional level, it's quite taxing preparing to speak about some really traumatic things by yourself. I think those sort of things, in order to keep myself safe and in a good headspace, I think it would be best if I involved people that I can ask them questions, they can ask me questions, and it just comes out in a bit of a nicer way. But also, the whole point of this podcast was meant to be that it's kind of like talking through life's tragedies and comedies. And I feel like we haven't really gone through many comedies yet, and I'm sad to say that's because that is reflective of my life. My life has not been trust me, we will get into it. I've had some really funny, bizarre, insane stories that I will tell you guys at some point. But a lot of my life, sadly, has been a little bit of a tragedy. Wow. So we're going to bring people in. It's going to change the tone of the podcast. And I think it will really help bring some lightness to what we're talking about. I hope that sounds good. It's going to be good. I know it is. Now, I said in the last podcast episode that we would talk about 2 anniversaries that are coming up. One is, can you flipping believe it? It's been 5 years since the first COVID lockdown was called. There's a trend on TikTok at the moment, you know, of 5 years then and now. And lots of the videos that I'm seeing are like, oh, 5 years ago, I was, I don't know, on a low salary and a bit depressed. And now I have 3 children and I have a house, and I don't know, they go on cruises every 6 months. So lovely. Great for them. Thrilled for them. However, my 5-year story is actually a bit weird, because on paper, perhaps I look in a worse position than I did 5 years ago. But in actuality, I'm in such a better position now. It like hurts my entire soul in a great way. It hurts my soul in a great way how good I am now compared to how I was 5 years ago. We will get into all of that because I guess that's kind of what this episode and possibly next episode is going to be all about. Another anniversary, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, is it's been 1 year since I moved into my own flat. It's been 1 year since I decided to do life solo and live by myself and take that plunge and spend literally the only money I had on living by myself. I mean, it's still crippling me, but that's fine. That's the price I have to pay for peace, because I have so much peace living in this flat. I cannot stress to people enough how absolutely stunning it is to live by yourself when you're healthy. I think like some people struggle with it when perhaps they don't have a good support network or something like that. But me personally, I fucking love living by myself. It is delicious. So much in my life has changed for the better. And I feel like now I'm a year into living here, I'm fully enjoying it. You know, my flat is how I want it to look. I've got all the nice furniture. I've got all the nice bits and bobs. It's me. And so I feel like I'm just really enjoying it and just lapping up every minute that I get to spend in my own space. What a glorious thing to live by yourself. We'll talk more about this at some point, I'm sure. But I did want to just bring it up because as much as kind of this episode and next episode is going to be talking about some quite dark things, there is a happy ending. I want to tell you right now, in case you hadn't realised by my overall demeanour, I'm in such a fantastic place now. So it's not a hopeless story. I actually hope it's a hopeful story for anyone that is at absolute rock bottom. I got myself out of several rock bottoms and I'm here now. So, yay, fantastic. So, 5 years ago, picture the scene. I was 25 years old. I was in a serious, committed relationship with a man who was extremely calm and I was extremely scatty. He was very quiet, actually. We were opposites in many, many ways. He was very quiet. He was composed. And I think people saw that he brought out a calm in me that I didn't previously have. We had bought a house together, and I want to make it very, very clear. I did not have anything to do with the financial possibility of buying that house. My ex and his family had always grown up in council housing. So he, from a very young age, saved up and his money went towards deposit. Anyway, so we bought a house. We specifically, when we were house searching, wanted to find a house that had 2 bedrooms because we were thinking that, in a few years' time, we would start having children. So we wanted a second bedroom that would work for a child. It's actually crazy that I'm even saying this. Literally, I was a different human being. I was in a good job 5 years ago. I was working for the BBC as an assistant producer on a TV show all about VE Day. I was on the best salary I'd ever been on. The fact that I was even an assistant producer age 25 was, I think, it's quite young to be an assistant producer, especially for a big production like that. I had hobbies, I saw friends, I was part of clubs and societies, and from the outset, I looked like someone who had their shit together. I looked like someone that had absolutely everything worked out. But that's just what's absolutely hilarious about life is inside, I was literally crumbling, deteriorating, clinging on for dear life. But, look, I carried on that facade. I was like, hell yeah, look at me. And look, there was a little bit of smugness in me because all I wanted as a young person, like a child, teenager, I just craved stability because I'd never, ever had it. And my ex, for all his faults, he was the first person to give me stability and to give me peace. And I can assure you that for people that have never experienced peace before, when you have it for the first time as an adult, it is intoxicating. It is just like you almost melt into this like existence of just, oh my God, I can relax for the first time in my life. And then 5 years ago, as I think all of us remember, we all turned on the TV and Boris Johnson said that the UK or England or wherever it was going into a lockdown. So obviously I don't need to tell you guys everything that happened in COVID because I think we all remember it, right? I'm going to talk to you about it from like a personal perspective and how the coronavirus pandemic completely changed my life. More than that, it almost killed me. And I'm sorry to be so blunt, but I very, very, very nearly did not make it, which makes me feel really bizarre because I'm so different from the person that I was then that, like, thank God I made it out. But anyway, I'm skipping ahead. We're going to take it back to lockdown gets announced for the first time. we start working at home. My ex was actually like an essential worker, so he still left the house. So it was essentially me by myself in a house. And this is what I'm kind of saying about living by yourself is good when you're healthy, but being by yourself for prolonged periods of time when you're not healthy and when perhaps you're codependent or lonely or whatever is really not good. So me being in that house by myself, bearing in mind it was a building site as well, it was absolutely disgusting. And we had basically got Balaam's brother to be our builder for this house because he was a builder. He was an exceptional builder, actually. But he lived ages away and he couldn't drive to us to do the work during the lockdown. So we were in a house that was a building site but couldn't be finished. And I remember I actually used a cardboard box as a desk because I didn't even have a desk. We had no furniture. It was insane. So my mental health is struggling. It's taking a hit. I'm still producing my work at the BBC to the best of my ability. But being by myself so much during a pandemic and a lockdown did give me far too much time for my brain to wander. And it's something that I had never allowed my brain to do. I always kept busy and distracted myself with coping mechanisms in order to not visit any of the trauma that I had gone through in my childhood / early adulthood. Lockdown, I think for so many people, made people look inwards and deal with some stuff that hadn't been dealt with. And it became extremely overwhelming for me. And I was having a really, really, really tough time. My memory of this time is like a little bit all over the place because when you have extremely severe mental health problems, your memory actually is fucked. And I'll get into that more as the episode goes on. But so I want to just give a little disclaimer that my timings of how things happened might be actually a bit inaccurate, but I'm trying really hard to remember what happened and when it happened. So while I was at the BBC and obviously speaking to these incredible elderly people about their experiences in the war, which, by the way, was just an absolute privilege and honour to do, I was, I would come out of these phone calls sometimes and I would be extremely emotional. Not just sometimes for the stories, because some of the stories weren't actually super tragic. Some of these old people loved the war. They loved it. But more so, some of these elderly people were so lonely. And I became, because I obviously called them so much, I became kind of a friend to them. And I found that quite taxing because I just felt so sorry for them. And I was trying to explain to my ex that I think I struggled so much with this side of it because I'm an empathetic person. I know that word gets chucked around a lot, but I truly feel and catch energies, and I absorb people's energies. And I actually just Googled it because I was trying to think of what the word was. I was trying to think of what the word empathetic was. I was Googling things, and this article came up, and it was saying, overly empathetic traits in people with borderline personality disorder. And I was reading through this research paper and I said to my ex, yes, this exactly sums up why I'm finding producing this TV show so difficult. It's because I am overly empathetic, and I think that's to do with, trauma that I've had to experience. I've always had an issue with being too sensitive, quote unquote, with things that go on. And I feel deeply. I feel incredibly deeply, and I feel emotions way deeper than anyone that I had ever known. And it's only as I kept reading the research paper, I realized that for the first time in my life, I felt seen, and I felt like someone actually understood what was going on in my brain. And it gave me a lot of clarity because I had no flipping clue what was going on inside my brain. So I look at the title again and it says borderline personality disorder. And I'll be honest, the only times I'd ever heard of the phrase borderline personality disorder was when I was watching serial killer documentaries, and they were like, yeah, Ted Bundy probably had borderline personality disorder, or you know what I mean? It's the only time I had ever heard it. So again, I do some research and I'm looking up traits of borderline personality disorder, and it fits me like a glove. And so I think on that same day, I made a call to my GP. And when I finally spoke to her, I just said to her, I think I figured out what's been going on this whole time. I think it's deeper than depression and anxiety, which I had previously been diagnosed with. I think this could be borderline personality disorder. And I'd like to, speak to someone about that. And also for context, she had previously referred me to a psychiatrist for a bipolar assessment, which I didn't fulfill. The psychiatrist said that I had traits of bipolar, but I wasn't bipolar. So I brought this borderline personality disorder, theory to her. I saw a psychiatrist, however many weeks later, and I then got a report back however many weeks later, I can't remember, saying that yes, I had borderline personality disorder. And my first thought was relief. I was like, now I know what the heck is going on in my brain, because I was so poorly and I was making poor decisions and I was erratic and vulnerable and just all over the place. I'm just going to Google on my laptop an overview of BPD on the NHS website, because I want to just give you guys an overview of what it is in a way that I'm getting it right. Do you know what I mean? So we're going to get the laptop. So it says, NHS website, borderline personality disorder is a disorder of mood and how a person interacts with others. In general, someone with a personality disorder will differ significantly from an average person in terms of how he or she thinks, perceives, feels, or relates to others. Symptoms include emotional instability, disturbed patterns of thinking or perception, impulsive behaviour, intense but unstable relationships with others. And here it does say that people with BPD come from many different backgrounds, but most have experienced some kind of trauma or neglect as a child. Essentially, the way I see it is people with BPD are adults that have an inner child that is screaming with pain and begging to be seen and heard. That's how I perceive it. And so I truly thought, oh my gosh, this is like the start of my recovery, because now I know the issue, I can sort it out. Also, for some context, I had tried to seek mental health help from the NHS for a really long time. Actually, since I was a child, when I was first kind of aware that I had anxiety, because I've had anxiety since I was a child. I've been told by 2 separate boroughs, because each borough has a different mental health institution. I don't know if I'm saying the right words here, I'm really sorry, but I've been told by basically 2 separate people that my mental health was too severe for them to work with. But then they'd forward me to the severe mental health units, and they would say that I'm not severe enough. They said, unless you are going to kill yourself in a week's time, you are not severe enough. We can't deal with you. Sorry, we're at capacity. So basically, I was in no man's land, because I was too severe enough for any meaningful help, but I wasn't on the verge of death, so I couldn't get anything. So I thought, naively, that, okay, I'm diagnosed with a serious mental health condition now. The NHS will have to help me. They will have to actually do something now. Oh, little did I know that was not the case. I'm going to have a little tea break. I'm a herbal tea drinker. I literally never drink a normal cup of tea anymore. Okay, so back to the story. Get diagnosed, hope for help, feeling hopeful in general, feeling like, okay, I got this. And then VE Day happens and the TV show is shown to BBC One, and then I'm out of work, because the way that TV works is you basically have fixed term contracts and you work for one person for a little bit, one person for a little bit. And I was like, there is no TV industry anymore. The TV industry has... So things were tricky. I think my partner was starting to struggle with me, and because my moods were extremely up and down. I was erratic. I could be manic, I could be lazy. So because my ex was seeing, I think, probably quite concerning behaviours, and he didn't have the tools nor the emotional intelligence to deal with it, he thought, what can help my girlfriend right now? I know, we'll get a dog. I was dog mad. Look, I've always been dog mad. I love animals and I've always had a natural affinity to dogs. So we got my baby Frankie. We got him as a puppy. He was an older puppy. We got him from literally, I want to say, a traveller, gypsy type person who kept the dogs in a cage outside. So essentially, to give you a summary of what we've covered so far, I'm 25 years old. I look like everything in my life is working out perfectly, gloriously. On paper, fabulous. Inside, my past and the way I was raised and trauma that I had to experience was coming to bite me. I think it was already about to consume me. And then we went into a COVID lockdown. And as my partner was an essential worker, it was me in the house all day by myself. And shit, it was like a volcano that was about to erupt. We get the dog. The dog does shift a lot of things for me. You know, he's a puppy. He's a rescue puppy. Never rescue a puppy as your first time dog, can I just say. You know, my priorities have changed and I suddenly have a role again. And although I still can't find work, I am, you know, at least I'm supported by a partner who is still in work. And, you know, we have enough to get both of us by. At some point, I get work again. I mean, I had a background in news, so I sadly had to go back to the digital news work that I've been doing before as a freelancer. But yeah, I mean, grateful that that work existed, but that was the only work that I could find. Like I said, TV had completely dried out. Even though I had spent the last year trying to kind of break through into TV, which is very, very difficult. And as we navigate various, you know, lockdowns, not lockdowns, blah, 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 my ex's brother and his dad could come up and help us finish off this house renovation. So I helped. I would sand the floors. I took off lead paint from the door frames. I had these different focuses that I could at least, again, distract the old brain with, which was great because the NHS were doing absolutely nothing to help me with my new diagnosis. This is also where the period of isolation came in, because COVID, I think for a lot of people, was a very isolating experience, and some people found it really, really hard to deliberately make sure that isolation didn't happen. I know that some people used to do, oh my God, didn't they used to do like Skype pub quizzes, and they used to get all of their friends together on a joint Zoom call, and they'd all of these things. I mean, I already struggled with keep maintaining relationships with my friends, but I opted out of any of that. I physically could not do it. So I did start becoming very isolated. The only people I spoke to were my ex and his brother, who, like I said, was the builder of the house. And basically my life became my ex and my ex's family. My life, however, is on the absolute tipping point of what will be quite a prolonged suicidal breakdown. And I want to get into all of the factors that led to me tipping. But it does involve, again, some quite sensitive topics. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to park this episode here. This will be the end of part one of this topic, and I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty of what happened in the next episode. And I hate to do it, but this episode is already pretty long, and I need a little break. And we will talk about some really horrible things. I'm not going to lie to you, it's not going to be a cheery episode. But I think for anyone struggling, I think it would be quite a comforting episode, I hope. So, I hate to do it to you. We haven't done this before, but this is the end of part one. Thank you for being here. Love ya.